How y'all doing? Welcome to another episode. Rich people own libraries, poor people own big TVs. Poverty starts in the mind for reaches your hand, and knowledge is wealth. This is Issa Abu Issa.
This is Coach Gaines.
This is Nafis Abu Zaid. We'd like to welcome you all to the part 2 of this is episode 8 of Knowledge is Wealth series. And this is part 2 of what masjid you go to. And I know, like we said, this is a discussion that is needed, especially during this time, and it really deals with how financial literacy can help out the houses of Allah during this current pandemic or anything in the future. So even though we're not talking about finance right now, we are going to initially build up to that. So we're going to dealing with the infrastructure of the masjid. And last week's episode, we covered a lot of ground, talking about just the overall difference and contrast between the earlier Muslims and their masjids and how they work and function, and the masjids of today. Also, we talked about the strife, the inner discord, how it sabotaged and how it actually caused the infrastructure to go down a little bit and helping us moving forward. So along those lines, we want to talk about establishing a masjid. That's what we're going to start with today. Establishing a masjid should be done with an intention, a noble intention, all right? So when you're talking about establishing a masjid, how does that look? What is the purpose of a masjid? What role do the masjid serve? What is its function? Many people who attend masjids, or the masajids for plural, the houses of Allah, congregants and stuff like that, really don't know the intricate details of the role the masjid's supposed to play. But some people think of what it does for them on a daily basis. Like, a congregant come like, okay, I know that's my local masjid. I go there, and this is what I get from it when I go there. This is what happened when I go there. This is why I go there, right? But if you really understood the intricate details behind it, you would have a
more inclusive,
a more better appreciation You have a better appreciation of its function. All right. So the intention to build a masjid for the ibadah of Allah is a noble task, highly esteemed in Islam, okay? So building a masjid, we already know that there are multiple, numerous ahadiths on the virtues of building a masjid. We're not going to go into them now, all right? But it's highly esteemed that you're building it for the sake of Allah, for that Allah Jalla wa Ala can be worshipped. Allah, we mentioned that before. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? He says, adina, right? Fi buyutin adina Allahu, in houses in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow and turfa to be raised. وَيُذْكَرُ فِي اسْمُهُ, and in them His name is being mentioned. So worshiping Allah Jalla wa Ala should be the objective when you establish a masjid. However, as noble as the effect is, the following should be taken into consideration. If we are serious about transforming and taking our masjid back to its golden era, some might say, why you brothers start here? Y'all want to tell us about how financial literacy can help? Why did y'all start here? Because the objective, brothers and sisters, it should be the infrastructure of the masjid, not just the simple fact of what we see today. Why do we have masjids here? We have a masjid there, and we have masjids at odds with one another. We have big masjids, we have smaller masjids.
Nobody really understands the intention behind it.
Exactly. Trying to pull from resources from bigger masjids. Why is this like that? Why does it seem chaotic?
Well, it's missing a lot of the inclusiveness of the older times when a masjid was very inclusive. It handled every affair in the community. And when you spread yourself thin like that, and then it takes away the power from the general reality of the masjid, and each masjid is failing in something because it doesn't have that inclusiveness, strength that the older times had. You know what I mean?
And that was the point I was making last week. We had what's the community? Is the community citywide? Because if the masjid is the cornerstone for the community, and the community is considered citywide or section of a city, that can help that can affect people's perspective on their community versus what's not their community. So I think that's very important, and that's from the order for the people. We have to understand that, from our customs, what do we consider community? Is all blacks community? Is all Arabs community? Is the whole city a community? And I don't think nobody really made a definitive, drew a definitive line as to what's the community and what's not. It seems like it's to people's benefit. When I need help from this community, I'm a part of this community. When I want to be seen on that community, I'm a part of that community. So I think that somehow we should be able to establish what the community is.
Well, we have to be honest. A lot of times what happened was a lot of people do tend to stick to what their own community is.
Yeah.
Naturally.
Reality,
So if it's Arabs know when to stick. If it's Somalians,
Indigenous
they know when to
people stick
stick.
with indigenous
Indigenous
people.
people stick. And I think by doing that, whether it was organic or whether it's deliberately, I think we have to really take a look at the role of Islam, because Islam broke past the barriers of that. And it brought us more together. Henceforth, the ayat where Allah Jalla wa'ala says what? Where he makes it clear, Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind, indeed I created you from what? A man min dhakarin aw untha, from a male and a female, being Adam and Eve. And I made you into what? Nations, right?
Nations and tribes.
To get to know one
So what?
another.
Ta'arafu, so that you can know one another.
And learn from each other.
And learn from one another. So if we're not utilizing that faction, okay, you might have Somalians in this area, you might have Yemenis, you might have indigenous people here, you might have, whites here, you might have that. But it should be, when you look, like you said, if you look at the city not being broken down into what sections in that way, but it's citywide, we should have been thinking about solidifying a seat of power. How can you do that? Looking at masjids that are big and having them as our center, right? And then them deploying small masjids, meaning that the big
To relieve some
masjid,
pressure.
the big masjid does what? It actually administers the funds to get the smaller masjids only for the purpose of so-and-so, only for the Muslims in that area. If it's time to pray, you can pray. But when it comes to the bigger jama'ah, when it comes to Eid, the Eid and stuff like that, then you're going to come here.
But a big
This is the
masjid
central hub.
should have been like the White House.
Well, I seen that kind of
The big
taking
masjid
place.
should have been like the White
with
House.
The United Muslim Masjid.
Okay.
They had a smaller masjid on Point Breeze. We used to have a store on Point Breeze a few years ago.
Okay.
And during that time, I think Idris was the imam.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that
they
was a while back.
that was a while back. So what they ended up doing was they had I think that masjid is still there, but they did exactly what you're saying. The bigger hub was 15th and Christian, and then the more smaller Musalla that still held certain Jumu'ahs and certain iftars and things like that, community meetings for that area right there was deployed. And it was
Just the thing, right? If you, unfortunately, in our community, in our ummah, if you have an issue of sabotages, or if you have an issue of people saying that everybody's off it, or something's wrong with somebody's belief system, and that's always the kalam, that's always the speech, it's very hard to get people to work together because everybody's scared of each other. Secondly, unfortunately, we also have racism amongst Muslims today too. So you have that problem. So you have like the indigenous community that's who are the majority of the Muslims in Philly.
and the backbone of the Muslims in this country.
Period. But they can't. It's hard for them to move in with the other ethnic groups of the Muslims because of racism. That's just the reality.
Yeah, well, the Prophet ﷺ already gave you that.
You know what I mean?
That racism
Yeah.
and tribalism.
And
Yeah.
economics,
And economics play a
economics
part.
can be a form of racism because you have the haves versus the have-nots. And Sheikh Tahir brought this when he first came back.
Well-
That the issue in the Muslim divisions has a lot to do with the haves versus the have-nots. The haves, they go into a comfortable space for themselves, and the have-nots are usually doing things by default and working together by default, but the intent is not there.
Exactly.
It's just by default. It's just we work together.
So if we are serious about transforming and taking our masjid back to this golden era, and when we say golden era, this should always be the objective. And anyone that's a part of a masjid, and even the congregants a part of a masjid, should always want to feel that connect or that direct connection with the Salaf Salih, okay, the righteous predecessor. That's what we mean, the golden era. Everyone should want to be connected to them in some way. So if we want to transform our masajids back to that time, then we need to be looking at that. Then this here, it should be what? This point should be adopted wholesale. The golden era masjid culminated in the emergence of men of high spiritualism and intellect. I want you to understand something. A man of high intellect is a man infused with high spiritualism. A lot of people don't understand that. A man with high intellect and his spiritualism is actually low. In Islam, this is not considered a person who's intellectual. All right? This is not an individual who's intellectual. If you cannot differentiate between right or wrong, and you got a PhD, but you think drinking alcohol is something that's a social norm and it's something that is good, it shows me your level of intellect is not there, Islamically. All right? Because that doesn't mix. So your high spiritualism should be there. So this is what he's saying, that these men, they had high level of spiritualism. And they had a high level of intellect. Henceforth, last week's episode, what we explained? What separated the golden era the masjid of our predecessors from our masjid of today. One of the main things was the essence, the spiritualism.
Libas and taqwa.
Right? They had spiritualism. So that's what separated them. They were more concerned with their connection and worship of Allah
than the way the masjid looked.
And then the way the masjid looked.
Yeah.
And if you fast forward into the 21st century, we're more concerned with the outward aspects of the masjid.
The numbers.
Numbers.
The chandeliers.
And I'm going to explain something. I was saying something to my co-host, coach, if you allow me to say it. I was saying something to him earlier about it, that one of the main ingredients, wallahi, tallahi, wallahi, and, you know, I'm a humble servant of Allah. The main ingredients for the downfall of any society, especially Muslims now, is their lack or ineffectiveness of exerting taqwa. Taqwa is going to be the main thing. That's the foundation. Allah says in the Quran, I will tell you the verse, La Masjidun Usisa ala taqwa min awwal yawm. All right? Allah says that a masjid, that from the very foundation, it was built upon taqwa. That's what it was built upon. That was from the very start of it. And this was in contrast to Masjid During. All right, Allah talks about this in Surah Toba. Yeah. So also I was telling Coach that in the Quran, Allah Jalla wa Ala says that the best garment one can wear is the garment of taqwa. Fi Surah A'raf. Allah also says the best provision, وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ زَادِ تَقْوَى. In Surah Baqarah, the best provision one can take is the provision of taqwa. So taqwa is the main ingredient that the Salaf had. This prevented them from cheating, from robbing one another, from being suspicious of one another, from harming one another, from trampling upon the right. This broke that down. Ibn Taymiyyah was asked, what makes an individual a righteous person? He said, what makes an individual righteous is that he give each and every one their due right, their haqq.
And taqwa is the asl of tawheed. Sheikh Muqsim Maluk said, he said the asl of tawheed is taqwa. That's why anybody who has any kufr can have taqwa. But every person that's a Muslim, that's a believer, no matter what his level of his iman, he has to have some level of taqwa because he has tawheed. You can't separate the two things from each other.
Look at that. And see what I'm saying? That's what makes us formidable. All right? That's what makes us formidable. All right, next one, niece. If you look at these golden men, like Ali ibn Abi Talib, Zayd ibn Thabit, Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Umar, Musad ibn Umair, Anas ibn Malik, as well as outstanding ascetics like Hassan al-Basri, Sufyan al-Thawri, Ridwanullah ta'ala alayhim ajma'een. In essence, every Muslim should derive spiritual and mundane value for attending the masjid. Do you understand that? When you go to the masjid, you should come away with two things. You should increase in your spiritualism, and you should have gained some type of value. You talk about networking now. If you didn't have a job, when you go to the masjid, you're going to leave out of that masjid with some type of connection to where you can get a job. If you go to the masjid and you didn't have a friend, or you felt down, or you didn't have this, and that, you should be able to go to the masjid, and someone there in that masjid or anything that's facilitating that masjid will help you. No matter on what level it is, that's what the masjid serves.
And it's funny because you look at the churches back in the day. I remember I was talking to my mother the other day, right? May Allah guide her to Islam. I mean. And she was saying how back in the day the churches were the central for the whole neighborhood, like food, a job. When they did when they wanted to get votes and the congressmen, they would go to the church. Everything happened at the church, and the Muslims for some reason don't get this concept.
Well, actually, that's because there's a gap. But right now, we're going to go over that. Actually, the earlier Salaf got that.
I'm talking about today.
Yeah, the earlier Salaf understood that. Yeah. The masjid was that. Yeah. But now, today, is a whole different thing because, like I said, the perspective has changed. So at the end, it says that, again, what you just mentioned, if attend the masjid as a citadel of learning, every segment of the masjid should be professionally administered. Okay? Administered by the imam with the support of other competent hands in the community. Just wait. We're going to talk about the role of the imam later, not in this episode. Yeah. But the imam should have a more respect. And a lot of times, our imams don't have that respect.
Yeah, they just treat them like a hired
It's
hand.
a ploy.
You know, come in. We don't need all of that from you. Just get a couple classes. Can we like 3 classes out the week, lead the salat, and don't even think about getting paid for it. Like, don't, like that.
That's how it goes.
So what that does is, it doesn't allow the imam to actually be an imam. it stifles him.
But there's a flip side to it, though. The imam should have certain qualities, though, that also allow them to fulfill the roles that one should see. Any person who just know Arabic, as Issa was making earlier, and that's unfortunate in the land of the blind, like Sheikh Mukbal said, every 1 hour person is a scholar.
As a scholar, yeah.
We think that if anyone who know the Arabic language, that somehow give them
Automatic student of knowledge.
student, talib or ilm, or some type of, you know what I mean, any type of status. But that's not necessarily mean they have the necessary traits or qualifications.
So those levels are being mixed up today.
They are being, they're being muddled because
And
the
then
person
we
knows
talked
Arabic.
about the earlier Masajid that were looking for central leadership and things like that. A lot of the reasons why they were debunked, you would look at the fact that they didn't speak Arabic fluently, but you didn't look at their taqwa. You didn't look at their ability to be a community activist. You didn't look at their discipline or their ability to raise a family.
Yeah.
You just say, oh, this guy, he's jacking up the Arabic. He doesn't really know. We're going to put this young buck
They
in
make
place.
Arabic the criteria of taqwa almost. If you speak Arabic, that for some reason that gives you automatic taqwa.
But
That's just insane.
But on the flip side, Arabic does play a sharp, direct connection to the deen, because without a strong understanding of it, you won't have a strong understanding of the religious text, which is the Quran and the Sunnah.
But it doesn't give you taqwa by itself.
But it doesn't give you taqwa by itself, and that's true. It doesn't. I mean, Sheikh Al-Albani made that clear. If we were just going off of the
And
Quran,
it's not knowledge,
or
and it's
Arabic,
not knowledge
you know what I mean?
in
We
and
were
of
cut,
itself.
we were cut from here, then cutting from here, because when you use hadith, we'd be using Arabic. A yad in Arabic would be from the fingertip up to the elbow. So Sheikh Al-Albani already read out the concept of
just
thinking
being
just
Arabic.
itself. But Arabic should be something. You can't even be a mufassir if you're
no
not
doubt.
even strong
No
in
doubt. It's
Arabic.
something you should try to learn.
Yeah, it's something you definitely should have. And I think any imam should be fluent in Arabic. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, man.
Any imam should be fluent in Arabic.
That's
I'm
one
not
of the
saying
criteria of
fluent.
imam.
I'm not saying fluent in speaking. I'm talking about fluent in understanding the religious text.
Yeah, we had to go into text and teach
What
it to
Allah
somebody.
said and what His Messenger said.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying in fluent in speaking.
Yeah.
I'm saying you should be fluent in.
You know what? Just when you said the imam should have people around him, we just mentioned that. It's something, like I said, that I got from Sheikh Mahmoud Uthiyama, right? Hafizullah, may Allah preserve the Sheikh, right? And I seen how he ran his masjid. Now, he was the imam, and he made most of the decisions, right?
The Sheikh asked about you too.
Huh.
No.
Sheikh Lutiyama.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I told him about when sent you the what's the name? The brother sent us.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So, and one of the things that the Sheikh did was when he built his masjid, it was called Ansar Sunnah, right? He was the president of it. So, I mean, obviously he made all the decisions, but the people he had on the board with him was Sheikh Muqsin, who was another Islamic teacher, right? Somebody else to handle the day-to-day religious affairs with him. But outside of that, he had a business owner, a lawyer, a doctor, a financial person, a person that knew the banking system. All these people was on the board. Yeah. And when it came to the finances of the masjid, the Sheikh ain't getting their way. He let the people who ran finances. The people that ran to keep up with the building ran to keep. The people that paid the bills paid the bills. Yep. And they were people that went to school.
And that's basically what that just said. Professionally administered by the imam, so they can have help, support from competent hands. That's basically the point our brother was just mentioning. Also, the congregations, the people who actually attend the masjid, something need to be understood as well.
And
can make masjid more interesting, fascinating, captivating to attract increasing fellowship or audience. Go ahead.
And I'm still on that same point.
Yeah, go
ahead. We noticed that the issue of you brothers don't come around, or we don't see you like that. So just because a brother's attending the masjid all of the time, just because a brother's always there with the key, he automatically gets put in the administrative position, just like the person that automatically knows Arabic is automatically put into the imam position.
You're right.
When we were going through, we had some experience in the past, and we was like, well, how the brother ended up getting he's here. You ain't never here. But we're looking at the reason why we're not here from with that, we always traveling. We got the story. We're not here. We don't even live around here. Why we got to be here to contribute our knowledge to here? So I believe that, just to add to what you're saying, you're not going to have fun activities. You're not going to have the right personalities, the right community activation if it's relying on the people that we see coming through the front door every day, and we don't have the husnul run to say, okay, he's not coming not because his heart's not connected to the masjid. It's just it's a citywide thing. He's around. Or he might be, caught up in some things.
Exactly.
So we have to change our criteria.
In other words, your physical presence, being there all the times, it shouldn't be what persuades you whether or not a person has status or not.
Yeah.
And more so, it should be like, if we're talking about professionally, it should be what they can contribute on a professional level anyway.
Yeah.
Meaning, number one, is they capable of having the qualifications and the education to run that particular field or assignment or office that you're appointing to them.
Exactly.
That's what it is, and that's what's going to help out.
Capable
on that
hands,
level.
basically, again.
So now we're going to move on to the topic of the role of the masjid, and we're going to try to touch on this briefly. But like we said, we didn't get to the financial part yet, but just bear with us. The role of the masjid have many roles and functions, okay? This is some of the roles that it played in the past before we get to the masjid, the roles of the masjid today. All right, one of them, and me and our co-hosts, we can take turn reading each one, but I'm going to read the first one. Masjid is the headquarters of the Muslims, all right? During the time of the Khulafa, especially as you was mentioned before, Umar ibn al-Khattab, even Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, that what happened was during their time, the masjid was like the White House. So much, for example.
They ran the state from there.
That's where they ran the state. That's where they ran everything from. They ran it from there. It was the headquarters. All right? It is a place from where state affairs are run. The leadership of the Muslims used to meet, envoy, sign agreements, outline state policies, address and counsel their subjects in the Masajids. They learned this practice from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the succeeding Khalifa Abu Bakr, and others followed this practice without fear after his demise. I want to tell you something that why this is so important. This puts you in a seat of power. You don't even see it. This strategically placed the Muslims in a seat of power. And it's very important that the Muslims have a seat of power in a land where they're not predominantly the ruler, or they're not predominantly the
they're a minority, and they don't have that.
Why?
Because
you need some voice. How do you get things done? How do you make it understood that the Muslims need this or the Muslims need that? You need a voice. And how is that voice going to be respected if it don't got nothing backing it? It need the unity backing it. It need the Muslims on a solid unit. We had something similar to that. And whether y'all want to agree to it or not, me and our co-hosts, we keep talking about this, but I bring it up, the Abu Muslima.
He did.
Some people might say, well, brother, why you keep bringing Abu Muslima? Because if you go back to Abu Muslima, really you go back to it, he had support.
He had support, unified support.
He had unified support.
And he had a lot of these aspects inside of his community, and the other communities around the nation was riding with him.
The masjid was an annex. It was off the parkway. It was big enough to house. It had a place to shroud the dead. It had a place to marry. It had a gym. It has a school. It has his office. It has a library that others can come and read the books, not just the imam.
Listen.
SubhanAllah.
When Sheikh Salam Tawil came here, when Sheikh Hassan Bennett came here, and I remember we was in Germantown Masjid, both of them said something similar. Sheikh Hassan Bennett was talking about the need of educating people from amongst ourselves, coming back, being able to go into the books of fiqh and be able to help out with on that level, okay? And then you had Sheikh Salam Tawil talking about us creating some type of funds so that the Muslim can have a plot to bury people. That the Muslims will have this or that to bury people. It's staggering because if you look around, most of these things we don't have if you're talking about one group of people. But there are Muslims who have it, but some people say, well, you know, Khadija, she ain't this, she isn't this, she ain't that. Some people this and that. But other Muslims are jumping to this and doing what need to be done. But the ones who are champions saying, listen, we got the Aqidah flag, we got the Minhaj flag, we are the right ones to follow.
But they forget that this is
falling
Minhaj.
behind in all of these important roles
this is
that
Minhaj.
the masjid should have.
Yeah, this is Minhaj.
How are you falling behind? Because again, we have to really go
why
back.
isn't anybody from the community inspired to take on the initiatives? Because they have the correct Aqidah.
Well,
they're just like, all right, well, you know, we don't do that. You know, we'll go to these other places. It's just
it calls me to do an investigation. We got to go back. That's what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
You have to go back and look. Yeah. Why is certain people moving this way? Why is certain people moving this way, and why certain people are moving this way?
I mean, one of the things is that when we talk about minhaj, and we talk about the way and stuff like that, we forget that it's a total package to it. And we read these types of things, making it seem like this isn't minhaj, this isn't our deen.
It's like just how you treat it.
What I'm saying is that a lot of times you hear people wave the Aqidah flag a lot, right? And I think sometimes we get so busy with that, which we should. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be, but we forget that there's nuances to this religion. There's other parts of minhaj that go along with your daily life. It's not just going around saying, hey, you can't worship the Trinity. It's not just saying, hey, guess what? You can't worship the sun, the stars. It's not just that. It's a whole lifestyle that goes along with it, and I think we got away from that minhaj of what this lifestyle is. And clearly we see that one of the questions I'll throw out to one of my co-hosts, or both of you, is the masjids, right? We see all these different masajid, and the big and the small, the medium size. Everybody's trying to do their own way of this, I guess. And it's not really working, because if you would have just a central masjid and a big masjid, I'm not saying it got to be one, the city's pretty big. Maybe you have 2 or 3 of these big masjids. I don't know. But if you got all these competing masjids trying to run the same program, it just looks like a goulash of mess. It looks like you put a bunch of fruits in a cup.
But you got to be real. We got to go back to last week's episode. Be honest. Most small masjids that weren't endorsed by a big masjid in the first place to start would start because of what?
Discord.
Discord.
Discord and the larger
I don't like how these group of people are running. I don't take from them.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go start my own little thing over here, and then I'm gonna pull from these resources, and then we're gonna go against that masjid. You gotta be honest.
So everybody's fighting
Discord.
over the layman as a resource.
The Prophet ﷺ made it clear that there are 2 leaders. The one who does what is causing the fitna. What did he say? If there are 2 leaders,
Everybody's
the Muslims
standing
agreed
against
upon,
the one.
right?
Yeah.
The one who is trying to do what against the leader is what?
The one that's trying to separate the jama'ah. Everybody fight that one.
We gotta understand structure, man. Structure is very important. Whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, it puts you in a position of power.
But I don't think that nobody feels like they're falling into that warning because they don't look at the community as citywide.
Okay.
They look at it as block-wide.
They're lying a little bit. Not saying they like I got a person, but there's some dishonesty.
Yeah, going
when
on, yeah.
okay, I'm gonna open the masjid. There's no masjid in this part of the city. I'm gonna open it down there. But then when you get there, everybody from this part of the city is praying here. So what happened?
So
you got
everybody's fighting over the resources, which is the layman.
the people that you said that you open the masjid for in this area don't even attend your masjid.
Yep.
And you pull people from a whole other part of the city because the only reason why they go to your masjid is because they want a pristine version of Islam that they believe that they're getting coming to you. So we took our money resources, we took our knowledge resources, and we took our personal relation resources, and we took it all home with us.
Yeah, I noticed that. You know what I noticed too? I noticed people open up a masjid like in an inner city area, right? That's pretty bad. And I'm noticing this since I've been back in Philly, right? Like I said, I've been back here a couple of months. And people, they'll take a masjid, they'll move to an area, and the people in the neighborhood that live in that neighborhood that are Muslim or not,
They don't even know what's going on.
Let's talk about the Muslims that live there. A lot of them are on the corners, doing drugs, running around doing crime. They not even they see give you the salams and they all right with you Muslim. They see the masjid, they cool with it, but they ain't the ones coming there. The people from across town coming to the masjid. The people from other parts of the city that happen to be religious or happen to be on what you on, they're coming from somewhere else.
And if you were feeding those people in that neighborhood, if you were going to those blocks,
go into that.
talking to those people, giving out the dawah paper, doing the
We're gonna get into
groundwork,
that.
you would have a whole fresh new face of people in your masjid and not pulling people from
what
another
was,
area.
So what was the intent of moving the masjid to these neighborhoods in the first place? Fighting over the same
We're going to get to
resources.
that because this all falls under the role of the masjid.
All right, so
the function of the masjid.
I'm gonna
is
jump
there.
in. I'll jump in.
Let Issa read the second, then you read the
Where
third.
we at? Okay.
You right here, masjid judicial court.
It says masjid is a judicial court. The Prophet ﷺ, peace be upon him, and all his successors educated in the mosque disputes, rifts, and disagreements among the people were entertained and resolved from time to time.
All right, we gotta stop right there. You gotta elaborate on that for us, Sheikh, because we have the situations where, and you keep using Abu Muslim as an example. When you use the masjid as a judicial court in America, you'll find us giving brothers lashes in the basement. You'll find us actually going to people's homes.
The guy cut the hand off up there Overbrook.
And forcing khula inside of people's homes, forcing a woman to divorce her husband as if though you're a judge. These things have taken place as of recent because we're not in an Islamic state, but we're using the masjid as a court and we're enforcing the discipline, so people are scared of that.
But one thing that sticks out here when it's saying the masjid is a judicial court, you have to understand when he says that the Prophet ﷺ himself, who was a legislator, by the way, and he said successors. Successors, he was talking about khulafa, leaders, right? He wasn't talking about the local imam.
So it's in the hand of the state.
So yeah, exactly. It's in the hand of the ruler. So it's not that already removed the notion of a local imam or someone can take these type of matters into their hands.
But
they try to apply this to the local imam.
And that's where those minhaj issues came in.
Yeah,
like with the Ansar Allah community, or like with Imam Abu Muslim, or with Jamil Alameen. They were trying to discipline community as if though they were judges.
Yeah, the guy cut the guy hand off in Overbrook.
Yeah, stuff like that was happening over the pan of 30 years. So Salafiyya put a stop to that. The call to Salafiyya put a stop to that.
That goes back to again to the issue I was trying to make about the taqwa situation. The taqwa is going to stop you from going over the guidelines.
Okay.
All right, knowing what your seat of power holds. Just because you are in this position of leadership, it doesn't mean you are an Islamic leader. You can do X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
So if, let's say, for example, I don't know if Abu Muslim was into this, but just say if Abu Muslim was charged or tried with something like this, then it was incumbent upon him to resort back to, researching the matter, going back to the people of knowledge, going back, whether he went back through the research of the books, the earlier scholars, and then after he did his thing, then he went and consulted with the scholars, like, look, this is what I found, what do we do in this situation, what do we do here? His taqwa would have required him to do that. You understand what I'm saying? His taqwa would require him to stick to those guidelines. When you have people coloring outside of those guidelines, 9 times out of 10, it's due to their jahl, their ignorance. It's due to the fact of they have lack of taqwa and so forth.
And power hungry.
Outside, and power hungry and stuff outside of those confinements, right? You go next, inshallah.
Okay. So the masjid is a school and a university. The early Muslims and their successors were all tutored in the masjid on different subjects ranging from the aqidah, fiqh, sharia, hadith, al-Quran, science of the Quran, ethics, adab, istiqadiyya, iqtisadiyya, economics, siyasa, politics, etc. The teaching took the form of study circles, debates, and practical. The university was open to everyone, day and night, summer and winter, not requiring application form or formal permission.
I want to make something for the point 2 and point 3. I want you to understand something. It's stating the fact that this was how the masjid was back then.
Okay.
All right? And a lot of this stuff ain't going on obviously now. And a lot of this stuff do have guidelines.
But some people are like, man, it ain't going on in my masjid.
Yeah. But a lot of this stuff do have guidelines in order to actually to happen anyway. And it's gonna mention that. So, but at one point with the earlier Salaf, the masjid we seen was open for all of this.
It was.
It wasn't like, okay, they looked at the masjid like, okay, this is where we worship, and it's separated from our daily lives. That concept of church and state. That wasn't it. You don't see that here.
We fell into that somewhat now, where we just pray there and then we go home.
Yeah, we just like, okay, the masjid is just a place where we're going to pray. We might get to do a class there, but my daily life goes on outside the masjid.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That wasn't it. The masjid played a significant role in the earlier days and with the function than it is now, right? So another point here I want to bring, see how all of these subjects were covered by Islam?
Yes.
All of these subjects was covered by Islam, right? And the fact that these things are something that we should have someone who is learned in these things to administer and teach. The imam should deploy. If the masjid is big enough, if the accommodations can be big enough, then it should be some places where this can be smaller functions, these can be laid out, which should now be a vice to all the imams. And I used to be an imam, so understand that. Our advice to be an imam is learn, learn, learn. The imam should never take a position just because he's at that position to think that he doesn't need to learn more. No, you need to learn. Because you need to delegate yourself to be in a position of leadership. And leadership takes a huge role, as we're going to see the many hats that the imam used to wear back then versus the hats the imam wears now. We're going to get into that, inshallah ta'ala. Point number 4, masjids. Another role of the masjid is what? It was an information center. It's a century here.
Yeah, that's the British.
Yeah, British way of saying
It was an information center, meaning that it was a place where you can get what? Information. It was a place that you can get resources. We talked about networking earlier. If you're looking for a job, if you feel as though you feel down and out, you need someone to talk to. You need to get some of this. You need to know about this. A woman battered in shelter. She need to know where to go. The Masjid had the resources.
You know what's
like
deep?
the community board at their local coffee shop.
What's deep is when we was down Kensington, right down Gotham, and I was talking to Sheikh Mahmoud about the dope heads coming in and how they be coming in asking us crying and stuff like that. And I was like, the Sheikh was like, he basically was like, what's the problem? I was like, no, I'm just asking what we should do. He said, listen to them. Like, listen to them. They coming in, complaining about their life, or they feeling sad, whether they Muslim. He said, if they sit down and they coming in, like, listen, brother, just start talking about his life. And miss their daughters. They ain't seen their kids in a while because they on drugs. He said, no, listen to them and give them advice.
But this goes back to what you just said earlier.
You treat people like bugs, man.
You just said the people coming to the Masjid in that region is not the people that's of that neighborhood who might be afflicted with certain trials, drugs, different things. They don't come to the
feel intimidated. I don't have the look.
Exactly.
The door should be open for everybody in that community, no matter what the ideology is.
We look too standoffish.
All important news relating to vital issues affecting the Muslims and Islam were announced in the Masjid, and it ensured the direct contact between the carrier and the receptor of the informational message. News concerning epidemics, new baby, war, death, marriage, famine, safety precautions, etc. were announced in the Masjid on the minbar by the leadership. All right? Mm-hmm. So the Prophet ﷺ would deal with it and he would address it. The successors would address it on the minbar. These things were talked about. They was discussed. Why isn't the Masjid a community center? Mm-hmm. I always found it pragmatic that when it comes to finding shelters, you got to go to a Christian organization. Mm-hmm. Be honest. When it comes to being clothed or fed, you got to go to a Christian organization.
Or a Jewish organization.
Or when you do see masjids open their arms up like this and doing this, they Ikhwani.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When you see stuff like this, they Ikhwani. This is a political group. They have aspirations.
We only hear that in these so-called pseudo-Salafi communities. We hear this speech. Anytime it's anything about activism, you Ikhwani. Anytime it's about let's help our people, you Ikhwani. Anytime I say, hey man, let's go out here, let's open up things for drug addicts, to help them out, that's Ikhwani. Anytime let's say, hey man, it's anytime where it's about helping people and it's not according to how they view it, then you're Ikhwani. That's a bad mindset, man, because it really holds the community back decades, man.
It's a bad mindset that if there's a Muslim living in that neighborhood and nobody feels safe. Every Muslim that lives in the neighborhood, somebody should feel safe. And if it's a masjid there, they should definitely feel safe. Because they know they have the responsibility of dedicated people who Allah sent as witness against mankind, who's going to maintain some type of order. You might say, hold on, slow, brother. They not police. It's not their field.
And they down with the get down.
No, I remember Dr. Taria was coming back talking about, I remember one time we was in Germantown.
Be criminals.
He visited Germantown. He gave a khutbah there, Dr. Taria, right? And he was talking about the fact of neighborhood watch and joining your community neighborhood and how the Muslims should be at the forefront of these things.
Let's keep it real. We got the non-snitch policy in our community. We're bringing street principles to an Islamic community, and it don't work.
It doesn't mix.
So now when the imam is trying to maintain the street code, he's not going to go to the police. He's going to try to take it on in his own hands. In his basement of his masjid. Yeah. He's not gonna go through he's gonna take the back door, like with
Philadelphia Negro.
like the Philadelphia Negro. We have to get out of that back door mentality. Yeah. Not that we running around trying to be witnesses and work for the police department from that capacity, but if there's a Muslim in the neighborhood, the other people should know that, okay, this is somebody that we should have some respect in front of, and his word carries weight, and his influence carries weight. And he has a strong arm, so we're not going to be able to put our weight on him.
Just the thing.
Especially if there's a masjid in the neighborhood.
If you were living, listen. If we were living like we supposed to, just like this, right? The masjid. Let's go back to the masjid, right?
Barakallahu feek. I want to know which masjid is that. Barakallahu feek. May Allah reward y'all.
The masjid, right? If the Muslims are really living like they're supposed to, right? If the masjid was the source of the goodness in the community, right? And I'm talking about everybody in the community. I don't care what you are. The masjid was the place that everybody knew you could come and get benefit in the whole neighborhood, whether he was hungry, needed clothes, needed somebody to talk to, and the Muslims was not involved in the underworld. People would be too shy to commit crimes anywhere where the Muslims were. The reason they do this now is because a lot of the kingpins and a lot of the people running the underworld has a beard and short pants.
And they look religious, and they keep the young boys out there.
Listen, that goes back to the initial thing. What separate the earlier Muslims masjid from this masjid? Taqwa. If you got, like you said, you got bulls mixing 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and then they even on the administration, or they even a part of this, or they even a part of, I'm cool with the imam, man, the imam real cool, but you know how he move, he shaky bakey. Yeah. Or we would bust a trap, or we get together with the plug after Jumu'ah, we're going to all meet up such and such masjid. We get together, we sit down, we bust it up. And this is reality. This is not point. I'm not saying naming no masjids or anything like that, but this is a reality.
No doubt.
When the taqwa factor is actually removed or it's really not seen there, this is what the type of stuff you're going to get. And what became the badge of honor now? Masjids became competing in the fact of how Salafi you were. Meaning in terms of how strong is your Aqidah? Do you stay away from the people of Bid'ah? Do you not compromise? Do you not do this? But in terms of social movements, in terms of
and you could be a sinner as long as you're down with a certain diet.
That stuff was neglected.
Well, what allowed that was when you say sins don't take you outside of Salafiyah. I feel like that statement is problematic because Salafiyah has a lot to do with akhlaq.
Well, that's kind of like almost like an interjet type statement, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, but I'm saying that stuff became neglected once you start to focus on one aspect. Stop restricting Islam.
Yep.
We just read to you the third point. It covered all aspects. Stop restricting Islam. Oh, we just need to actually revise the fact of everybody need to have the correct Aqidah. That's the thing we need to focus on, and just that. No, you're wrong, brother. We need to have professionally people who can fit, who are qualified, who know how to delegate these matters, and they fill the roles and the responsibilities and help us push it out. That's what we need to do. Yeah. Moving on.
No.
Okay. So Masjid is a platform for oratory, poetry.
Let's go.
Aisha radiallahu anha reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to provide Hassan ibn Thabit with a pulpit in the mosque from which he lampooned the disbelievers.
This is collected by Tirmidhi
and Al-Hakim. In another hadith, Jabir ibn Samra reported, I sat with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than once. His companions would recite poetry and recollect events from times of Jahiliyyah while he would share a smile with them, a Tirmidhi. Now, can I say something? Can I say something?
Yeah, that might need some more elaborations, but go ahead.
I'm not getting into the content of the poetry.
Yeah.
I'm not getting into whether or not, what context this is actually in. I'm not there yet. But if the Masajid in general were to give the youth more of a voice, and you see how much the youth are into poetry, and we've seen that when the Quran was revealed, the Prophet used his poetry against the poetry of the people to get everybody's attention to hear the truth. I see that mechanism missing, and I see the youth running away from the masjid because we don't respect them for their artistic and oratory abilities.
Yes and no.
Okay, so I feel like that this point could be looked at a little more to get the youth involved.
I agree with you that we should connect with the youth. That much I do agree. Mm-hmm. But I also agree that we need to also be, real with the youth. If the youth think that we're going to use musical instruments,
we're not talking about musical instruments.
Hold on. Let's just be real now. Right. If we're going to use musical instruments just to convey our poetry, which weren't done during Hassan ibn Thabit, all right? If we're going to use that as a means of a vehicle of trying to connect with them, then I say no. But we should use things that can connect with them, that they should understand the guidelines of expressing themselves. You have to understand, number one, that's why I said that this needs some elaborations in terms of we need to go back and see how the ulama really look at these ahadiths, because also the Prophet ﷺ was the leader. The Prophet ﷺ was the leader. So if he made the choice to allow Hassan ibn Thabit to even have an audience or a platform in the masjid to do it, that was a call that can be made from a ruler. Do you understand? Now, if can a masjid do that nowadays? I would love to see what the ulama have to say about that. That's just me. I'm going to safeguard myself here. I would love to see what the ulama say in terms of that.
We can take that to one.
But the point you made, I do agree. Masjid should reach out and create something for the youth. If they're expressing themselves, you see them expressing themselves.
But they're expressing
try to help
themselves
out.
via poetry, and I
Exactly.
believe poetry is being ignored.
Well, one of the reasons
and
it's being ignored
and it's
because
being looked at like it's a taboo.
I know. Listen, one of the reasons it's being ignored is this. I'm almost see this right.
Yeah.
Because we do have a form of poetry. It's called rap music. Right? They just put music behind it.
Yeah.
But back in the day, it was just poetry about the hood. Right? Hear me out. Some of it was vulgar and some of it wasn't. The vulgar stuff we know we leave alone, but rap music is just our poetry, right? And our people been doing this since the days of before 1492, before Columbus, right? So what I'm saying is that one of the reasons that we don't go there because people make their cultural apostasy, right? So they basically will say, if you say that, they're gonna say, oh man, you want some black stuff. You know what I'm saying? Anything about you or our culture is seen as negative. So if a Masjid does that. You know what I'm saying? If you go to the early mind, I say, yeah, that's cool, you can do that. And they do that, they're going to say, they on some nationalism. See, this is what happens when you try to implement stuff like that. It's nationalism.
However, to be honest, poetry is respected in Islam.
It is.
There are many, if you go on YouTube right now, there are many examples where there are different students of knowledge who will stand up and they will recite poetry to the sheikh. Sheikh Taymin is actually correcting one student in there when he was saying certain things. So poetry is something that is highlighted. And what you're saying from a cultural point of view, this is something that's embedded in us. It's embedded in most cultures.
It is.
They have that. The issue is the obscene, the vulgar, and the fact of the music.
Yeah.
If you can alleviate that and you can direct those kids to challenging them to put and compose poetry that is beneficial, right? And at the same, because it's a challenge.
Like the guy, what's the guy? Muhammad Boona
Muhammad.
Yeah, he used
Boona
he-
Muhammad. He's from Canada.
Yeah, but he used some music.
That wasn't his hustle. He evolved into that.
He
But his
evolved
hustle
into
was a cappella.
It was urban poetry.
Now,
Urban
hear
poetry.
me out. He mentioned Sahaba. He mentioned Aqidah. He refuted, some things that we should be warned against. And the youth heard him.
Yeah.
And it didn't go against, go against faith. Now, the thing that I'm really trying to, the point that I'm really trying to make is that without some form of art, without some form of culture, without something that can help us pass the time beneficial, we're gonna lose our youth. We're too stale. And if we don't figure out what we can take from modern days that doesn't go against the past, and if poetry is one of those things, I just believe that we should be able to bring in those youth that can meet that challenge. And it's not even really a challenge. This is the point I really wanted to make. That when we was to battle rap in the street, if you needed a beat, you was considered corny. It was even Freeway. Freeway did a battle with Cassidy recently. It was like a few years ago. And they were battling a cappella each other with the words. And it seemed like that Cassidy was getting out on Freeway a little bit. And Freeway said, I need you to turn the beat on. He had to rely on the beat. So we already know from our culture in hip hop that the beat is a crutch. And if you really want to show your intellectual skills, your verbal skills, your ability, if you really want to show those things, you got to cut the beat off, and you got to drop your 16 bars. You got to have a hard 16. Yeah. Period. Now, if you don't have nothing in your head, your 16 is going to be vulgar. If you don't have nothing in your head, your 16 is going to be ignorant. But if you memorize the Quran, if you have text in your breast, you're educated, you've been raised upon good manners, what's going to come out is what's in. Period.
No doubt. I mean, one of the things that I've seen since I've been back, man, is I've seen a couple of young boys, or I heard stories of a couple of young people that was in the Masjid. They was kids when I used to go to particular Masjids, right? And everyone I've seen, unfortunately, kids out of wedlock, just coming home, the girl ain't covered no more. I mean, it's just bad, man. You know what I'm saying? It's like the kids get teenagers and we lose them. You know what I'm saying? That's bad.
So some of the things that Coach is talking about right now could be one of the things that help us not to lose them.
And I think that's more constructive than sports. We push them into basketball, but basketball ain't like using your mind to come up with words so that people can hear what you're saying creatively.
But one thing that stuck out to me, what you just said, basically, is what's in them is what's going to come out. So if we can cultivate them on what point 3 was, all of those different things being taught, learning Quran, learning Hadith, then what they would put forth will come out good.
Yes.
And this is something that, masjids should look at. But this, again, remember, these are what the masjids of the earlier years were doing, as opposed to the masjid now. The another point is,
masjids as an abode for prisoners of war. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent some horsemen to Najd, and they brought a man called Thumama ibn Uthal from Banu Hanifa as a prisoner of war. They fastened him to one of the pillars of the mosque. The Prophet ﷺ came and ordered them to release him. Thumama went to the garden of date palms near the mosque, took a bath, entered the mosque, then said, I bear witness that there is none worthy of worship except Allah, and Muhammad ﷺ is the messenger of Allah. He embraced Islam.
Now, I'm not going to elaborate on that because, pointedly, we're not in the battle of Dar al-Harb, and this is not the case right now. We don't have prisoners of war, so we don't have to really worry about that. During that time, that really was going on during the time of delegating, so you can see that. Let's move to the next point, inshallah. I think this point right here is mind-blowing, and it's really, really need to be understood, and that is the masjid as a clinic. The masjid as a clinic. Right now, the masjid, for some reason, in our time, if you look at it, is really just more so borderline spiritualism and too much separated from
actual secular information,
exactly.
secular
right?
services.
And if they say it becomes like a spiritual clinic for some, right? However, the masjid was a physical clinic during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Aisha radiallahu anha, she said that Sa'd ibn Mu'adh radiallahu ta'ala anhu was injured in the battle of the trench, all right, being hit on the head, arm, vein by a Quraysh called Habab ibn Arqa. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam pitched a tent. So the masjid was real big, and if anybody been to Medina, they see how big the Prophet masjid was. That's why you can put a tent inside of it, right? So he pitched the tent in the masjid for Sa'd ibn Mu'adh so that he could be close to him for visitations. His wound was bleeding profusely, and he died after spending a month in that tent. This is collected by Imam Bukhari, by the way.
Can we slow up right there?
Yeah, we're gonna stop. Yeah,
because even like look at right now in the pandemic, they're saying that the masjid isn't essential. Think about that. How could a masjid not be essential? That doesn't even make sense. And because we don't have these type of services in the masjid, the state is able to say that to you.
Well, number one, religion isn't it. Because it separates the church and state here, religion isn't necessarily seen as an essential thing.
But we have so many registered nurses. We have so many people with those skills that have those jobs that there's no reason why we couldn't have health, scenarios coming out the masjid. Where if it's we should be able to deliver a baby inside the masjid. If it was a clinic,
they wouldn't have. They could still be open.
They should still be open. I'm not talking about surgery. Yeah, but there's the stuff that we go to the emergency room for the most part. They send you back home the next day for the most part. You just need a nurse.
One thing you got to keep in mind: a lot of this stuff can't be on that level you're talking about. For one, we don't even have big masjids like that can accommodate.
We do.
We have some. Listen, we have some.
We don't have no unity.
We don't have no unity. But listen, we don't have big masjids like to accommodate this. Another thing is the Masajid now, even in the state that we live in, it's not operating like that. So for me to tell you, okay, masjids now come and try to find and accommodate and start pitching tents up, or let's get some nurses in there and let's get some registered nurses and things like that. I mean, I don't know. It's going to mention it later.
No, basically, I think what Coach is saying, being as though it wasn't done in the beginning, we find ourselves in the situation we in.
Hear me out.
Okay.
The solution for saving the Masajid was one of the solutions that we brought in the last episode was consolidation, right? Okay. Let's use Philadelphia Masjid as an example. It is a fallout shelter. It is made of brick. A tornado's not going to break that down. It has plumbing. It has a kitchen. It has stainless steel. It has a lot of rooms. One of the reasons why they weren't opening up the hospitals because they were scared of beds. That masjid has beds now. But if our intent from the beginning wasn't to say, okay, instead of opening up all these fragmented masjids, we can create a health center now that can give out ibuprofen, aspirins, certain medication, PPE equipment. I had to connect on PPE equipment. I should have been able to go to the masjid and get enough orders on PPE equipment that we have free masks for everybody for the last month. But we're not communicating with each other.
We got herbalists in the community.
But Abu Zainab, he knows what to do with the teas and take the teas and make holistic medicines out the teas. Right. The masjid should be a place for this.
I know of two places.
At least on the introductory level.
I know of two places right now one masjid over there in Cherry Hill.
Yes.
My John Sterling.
Where John Sterling
John
is at,
Sterling,
Cherry Hill.
They had started a free clinic.
They had a free clinic, yes.
I know another masjid.
That you didn't have to have insurance to go to.
I know another masjid up northeast that had started a free clinic as well.
But this creates income. This is economical solution.
And this is something that we should be looking at moving forward.
And states give grants for stuff like this. All you got to do is want to do this. And the state throw all kinds of money at that.
This is something that we, and when I say we, I'm not talking about me, anyone who's in administrating fields of the masajids, they should look into these issues and see something of employing this, okay?
We would have the money.
That's not necessarily true. The companions with one Allah, this is one thing we need to understand when it comes to money. That's why I love this financial show, and then I love Islamic perspective on finance.
Yes.
Because sometimes we keep thinking money is what is need to do everything. Allah is what is need to do everything.
Allahu Akbar.
And when you have the necessary taqwa, Allah is going to give you the necessary money you need. The Prophet ﷺ looked at his companions. He said, what's going to happen when the treasures, the known ruling worlds, is going to be opened up to the Muslims? There's going to come a time where the treasures that they knew in the span of 30 years they was going to actually rule the known ruling powers at that time. They didn't know that. The Prophet ﷺ was actually what? Informing them that this is going to take place. This is why when Umar ibn al-Khattab, when he actually took and Kisra fell down, Persia fell down, he began to cry when they showed him the treasures because he remembered what the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said. And he said that rally Allah have spared. He has spared Muhammad ﷺ from it. He has spared Abu Bakr as-Siddiq from it. But he did not do what? He did not spare Umar ibn al-Khattab because he knew that wealth was going to be a fitna for the Muslims. But nonetheless, money is generated from Allah Azza wa Jal. Forget the currencies in play. I'm not talking about a note, this money, gold, whatever. Allah is going to provide for the Muslims if the Muslims have taqwa. That's number one.
And then after the taqwa, you don't also another reason you don't need money all the time.
Go ahead.
I remember, like I said, when Sheikh Mahmoud said something to me. He said, if the Muslims, like for example, we got doctors in our communities, right?
Yeah.
A lot of Muslim communities got doctors. Even the indigenous communities got doctors in it. Yeah. They got master degrees and PhDs and all of that stuff.
Right.
What's keeping the Muslims for getting them people together to come up with a medical plan? What's keeping you from getting the lawyers in the community together?
We're
to come up with a
saying
plan?
that because they shave their beard, we don't want to talk to him.
Listen, check
he
it out.
can't know his job for real because he shaved his beard.
So if you got
he
these,
wears a suit.
Yes,
Oh, he's caught up in this.
Yeah.
It's like we're being too judgmental and we're not extracting
if you got
from
these
each other.
doctors, they can go to the state and get all you need to start these organizations.
Exactly.
They just wanna
But
have a
everybody's
cultural
off
thing.
it.
That's what Coach
Yeah, if you have those professionals in place, if you have a doctor in
Right,
place.
talk in the club.
I spoke at Lincoln College one time, right?
Right.
Under the tutelage of Sam, Professor Sam.
Right.
And because he had a doctorate, I was able to express my ideas in a formal setting under his tutelage. You get the point of having doctors and PhDs around you?
Why it's important.
So now when you go to the state and you say, listen, this is what my community wants to do, they're going to want to know what professionals do you have that this is a responsible grant.
Exactly.
That we're not throwing this money away. Who do you have that's verified, that's trusted, that's approved? We don't need no degree. What do you need a degree for?
Or you can't
What you need to go to school for? What you need him for? He doesn't know nothing.
Or we coming out with books about no intermingling. You can't go to college or...
Before anybody has a degree to start his own school, we talk about the impermissibilities of intermingling when we don't have a segregated men and female school in any of these topics.
That's
it's
what
not
I'm
right,
saying.
man.
Like, that stuff don't make any sense because it hinder progress. And you need progress. It actually hinder progress. We need educational people. Let's move on to the next point here. That's a nice point, Coach, that you brought in terms of the professionals coming together, using some state funds to try to put forth these play. And that's why we said, what did we say again? This is a golden opportunity, this pandemic that we're in now, to show the masjids how to move as structure-wise on getting back to the golden era. All right, another point we can bring, masjids was an abode for the poor. SubhanAllah Adeem. I want us to really understand this too, because a lot of people don't even know why the Prophet ﷺ, when he built the first masjid in Medina, Do you understand what was done? What was the most people that was occupying that place at that time? They was called Ahlus Sufa.
Ahlus Sufa. Yeah.
And it was providing them shelter. The masjid was providing homes for individuals who did not have resources or homes where they can live at. The Prophet ﷺ actually set that up. And he also delegated and appointed that those people who were well off and had homes and families, that when it comes time to feed, you bring something from your family, and you feed the people of Ahlus Sufa. Abu Huraira, who's one of the people who narrated,
yes, the majority of the hadiths in the shortest period of time
was from the people of Ahlus Sufa, right? So, I mean, you just got to look at it. It says, the empathetic Prophet Muhammad reserved the corner of the masjid as a shelter for the poor who were known as the people of Ahlus Sufa. Bukhari reported that Abdullah ibn Umar anhuma used to sleep in the masjid and Nawawi when he was still young. He used to sleep in the Prophet ﷺ masjid. Trust me, brothers and sisters, a lot of people who are under the cloak of Salafiyya don't even understand that these things were instituted in Islam. They don't even know. They don't even know that Islam already dealt and covered these things, and they were moving this way. How are you going to say in the Quran that the Muhammad ﷺ was a rahmatul lil alameen, and this is not from his characteristic? How can he be a mercy to all of creation in existence, and he's not sympathetic towards the people who are poor? How can he be a mercy to all the people in Muslim and he's not sympathetic to the plights of the people in this community? It doesn't make sense. So when he built the masjid, what did he do? He made a corner carved out for the people who didn't have. Yes. When you look at our masjids today, you can't even go in there but stay the night.
You better not ask neither. You better not ask, because it might be a problem. You might come out there and look like a raccoon.
Right.
Black eye, something like
which
that.
Shows you that,
rough, man.
Listen, which shows you that you can't go in there
man.
because, okay, I understand you don't want nobody doing any drugs in there. You don't want nobody stealing anything. You don't want nobody doing this, and that. But you should have someone delegated to watch over the masjid.
You have an overnight shift. You have an overnight shift at anything else.
The masjid should be open.
Let me tell you what this lady said. She was a little extreme. It's an indigenous lady. She was extreme, little extreme. She said if you got these religious organizations in your neighborhood, churches and stuff like that, she said all these different religions and they don't have no place for the poor. She said all them joints should be burnt down. Now, obviously, that's a little extreme, but I got her point. Her point is, how is these religious organizations in your neighborhoods and they ain't taking care of you?
And they take care of you. How? It doesn't make sense. But when we look at the earlier Salaf and their structure, we see that they had this going on.
Yeah,
Our Prophet Muhammad had this. Isa, you want to...
Where we at?
A place to relax.
A place to relax. Okay. Look at this. Go ahead.
It says a masjid, a place to relax. Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu said, during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we used to sleep in the mosque or on the masjid and have our siestas,
which is a kaylula,
when we were young.
This is collected by both Ahmed and Nasa'i and Abu Dawood. So in other words, they used to take naps in the masjid. You want to talk about reaching out to the youth? The youth should be able to go, stop, take a rest period, and go into the masjid and take a nap. Again, take in consideration that a lot of the masjids aren't big enough. We're not talking about the smaller masjids.
We're giving the benefits to upholding the larger masjids and not getting those masjids shut down by extracting all of the resources
from them. Yeah, all of the resources from
take
them.
the resources back to the bigger masjid.
Take the resources back to the bigger masjid, even if y'all don't totally agree on every point.
And you don't have to agree.
The companions, they disagree with each other. The companions, the best of mankind after the prophets and messengers.
Don't say the companions didn't.
They disagreed on issues, fiqh issues, and community issues, and political issues. They disagreed.
They ain't gonna take from us if we say.
They had disagreements, man. That's what they still did. They still lined up. They still kept the big mashes. And they still stayed as a community.
And they still stayed as a community. You have individuals won't even speak.
I'm done now.
You have individuals won't even speak to you because you say. Because you go to certain masjids nowadays. I mean, and the bad part about it is, man, the sheep, and I like to say the congregants, and forgive me.
The sheeple.
The reason why I call it the sheeple because it's a true fitting description, man, that we really don't be using our intellect. How you let someone come and tell you that don't go to that masjid, don't circulate that masjid because Fulan and Alan, or they do this, and that. If you don't see the staple things, and I'm going to tell you the staple things if you don't want to know, and this is how the ulama laid it down for us. If it ain't no graves in that thing, you ain't got nobody spinning around, taking no nails and hitting their back or the Shiites. You ain't seeing none of this crazy stuff. Somebody praying towards a direction that's totally way off from where the Qibla is at.
They're doing terrorist attack
or
plans and all that.
Yeah, if you don't see none of that crazy stuff that should stick out to you, like, oh, where we at? You don't see men lined up with the woman is in this rank, and the man is in this rank.
You don't see the woman leading the salat.
Yeah, or you don't see the woman leading the.
They ain't
If you don't
praying
see these
southeast.
things, you can pray there.
Yeah, you can pray there.
You can pray there. I don't need
But
to
no,
go around
it's not
here.
about. I pray there. I just don't give them none of my sadaqah. No, I pray there. I go there, pray, bump real quick, roll out. But I ain't leaving nothing there because I don't want to support Ahlul Bidah.
Yeah.
What is that?
What is that?
Because
Yeah, we got a whole make-believe system.
because
man.
Abu Bakr was told that he couldn't withhold the sadaqah when they were slandering Aisha.
No.
There was a person he was given to,
Yeah.
or people he was given to.
Stopped
He found,
spending on his- yeah, stopped
and
spending on his
he
cousin.
and he stopped spending on his cousin because of the fitna, and he was admonished by that. I don't have all of the details, but you can help me out here.
Yeah.
But
He was admonished,
you don't hold the money back because of somebody's deviance or somebody's mistakes or something that you perceive. That doesn't affect your money and sadaqah. It's the house of Allah.
Especially strategically when it doesn't help you in any advancement. And that's the point that I'm trying to explain here, and that's what I think we're doing with this series. If you really look at it, most of the moves that have been made, even if they was done out of, let's just say for the sake of argument, even if they was done out of a wholesome intention, they did more damage than they did actually good. Because when you look at it, for example, certain masjids broke off because this masjid wasn't seeing eye to eye.
Yeah.
That masjid went and started up another masjid, right? What normally had to happen now for the resources, you said it earlier, I have to make masjid A that I broke apart of not look right.
Because I got to justify why I opened.
Because I need the resources. So if I got Masjid A looking funny to most of the people, and then they suspect Masjid A, now I can get those funds to come over here and help me. When y'all could have both got somewhere, have y'all stayed consolidated, raise some funds, move accordingly. What you didn't agree with, you would have did what Allah and His Messenger told you. فَإِن تَنَزَّعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَالرَّسُولِ إِن كُنتُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ ذَلِكَ خَيْرٌ وَأَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. In Surah Nisa, Allah says what? If you dispute or have a disagreement on anything, refer back to Allah and His Messenger. If you what? He put a condition there. He didn't just say that. It's a condition. If you truly believe in Allah on the last day, that is more better for suitable outcome.
You have taqwa, basically.
All right, so in terms of this conversation, right? So let's just say generally when we're speaking from infrastructure point of view. Like we said, we're not talking about known things. If you know for sure that the masjid is Sufis, they Shiites, or they this and that they actually go against the eternal or even the role or the significance of the masjid, like Masjid During. Allah told Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "La taqumu fihi abadan." Don't stand in there. So initially, no. But if you're going to tell me masjid so and so is corrupted or have evil belief system because so and so said it, and you don't got nothing clear, because it's already clear who is a deviant.
Yeah.
That stuff is clear. Stop acting like it's spookism. It's not clear. No, it's really clear. When someone is a deviant, we dealt with this on the night shift.
Ahmadiyya masjid is clear.
It's clear.
The
Ahmadiyya
Ahbaz
ain't even a
is clear.
masjid.
That's what I'm
First of all, they're
saying.
not even Muslims. It's already clear.
It's clear.
But when you talking about your fellow brother, now be honest, you talk about your fellow brother who might don't understand the sunnah.
Or
His
they might be a
Arabic might not
foreigner
be a
that
Chris.
take different set of fiqh rulings
Exactly.
than you do. They're not deviants because of that.
Exactly.
Or their culture getting away sometimes.
Exactly. That don't mean that, okay, they got distorted disbelief, so we can't help them out or we can't deal with them. That's
And nothing is more distorted than lying on Aisha.
And you still gave him- yeah.
Shirk is high, but then you
Yeah.
lying on Aisha.
So
if
no.
he was told not to give, to still give to those people,
Yeah,
name a
no.
deviance in the city other than the Shiite or the Ahmadiyya that their deviance
Or the
is worse than,
Ahbaz.
or the Ahbaz deviance is worse than
the
that.
haram.
We're just saying, let's be real
The
here.
haram, the two harams, the haramain, the one that's in Mecca and Medina, do not prohibit the Sufis from going there. They do not prohibit the Shiites from going there. They do not prohibit all of these people with different i'tiqad, akida. All right? You might say, well, that's a central masjid. The haram should not be permitted. You might say this, you might use that argument, but listen to the point I'm trying to make. You have to understand something here. There are clear-cut things that go against the tenet of Islam that we don't we don't support at all. And then there are things that are meddled with that you got to really get to the bottom and the heart of the matter in order to.
There's black and white issues. It's not black and white. You're right.
Exactly.
I mean, like the Ikhwan situation. I mean, I was in Egypt, and that's the Ikhwani capital of the planet, right? but a lot of times we get mixed up with people who grew up in a land where Ikhwaniyya is prevalent, and they may be affected by some of the tenets. There's somebody actually being Ikhwani. I remember Sheikh Mahmoud wrote a book called, it was talking about 10 Big Ghafilin. It was talking about the Aqidah of the Ikhwan. And he broke down that most of the people we call Ikhwani is just people from those countries who are affected by some of the tenets of it, but they never took no oath. You got to take an oath to be Ikhwani. You got to take a secret oath on the Quran and a gun. It's levels to this thing. Like when you say somebody's Ikhwani, what do you mean? Because Ikhwani is a group.
And Ikhwani's been generalized to mean anything hizbiyah, for lack of better words,
or any activism,
But listen, it's not good. I'm getting ready to do it right now. I got to. It's the night shift, baby. I got to do it.
Yeah, because he like putting sugar on turds.
Yeah, he
sometimes.
did. We got to be real.
It's not like putting sugar on turds. Come on, man.
So if we know that,
that's what keep the Van hustling.
If we know that Ikhwani has to have an oath, and if we know that these things are not that, then what is the agenda of people labeling people with these type of labels anyway?
Well, it's a political agenda.
What is the agenda?
Labeling people is politics.
Huh? Labeling individuals. Again, it goes back to what we were saying of what? Pulling people from one resources to another resources and letting me know that something ain't intentional. This is why I say it's sabotage.
Well, the layman person, you're actually the resource that they're fighting over. So you are the resource. This is why you got to label somebody Ikhwani or Hizbi and this, that, and the third, so you can you can destroy their brand, so nobody go buy from them. Yeah, and that's what everybody does. So you are the layman is the resource. Instead of putting all the resources together, whether it's the da'i, whether it's the student of knowledge, whether it's the imams and the laymen's, putting all the resources in one place, the resources are now being spread out all over the place.
Leadership.
And everybody's fighting over this resource.
Yeah.
No, last but not least, the Masjid, we're not going to go into each of the points now because we're getting ready to wrap up. Masjids are a place for eating, is a place for consultation. You know what I mean? This is during the earlier times. There's a place for devotion. We already know that. Masjids also are a place for implementation of Allah's decree. That's when you got a ruler in play. Nobody can take nobody in the basement. Nobody can, cut their hands off. No lashes can be given. Nobody can actually say that you're not married or you're not divorced. These are different guidelines, okay? Now, the role of the Masjid of today, I just want to mention this here before we close up and wrap it up because, alhamdulillah, it's getting a little bit late. We're going a little bit long. It says, while not pretty much stepping on the role according to Masjid during the earlier days of Islam, we must, however, state that the Masjid of today may not be able to accommodate the earlier role due to the increased population of Muslims. Instead, Masjid with greater size and space, or with bigger space, could create departments for these functions. For instance, the management could make provision for first aid box, libraries, meeting hall, counseling room for women and youth, sports facilities, entries, and so on. So this is something that you can broaden your horizons a little bit, meaning that the Masjid is just not separated from secular. And I think we're getting that point now. The Masjid in the earlier time with the Prophet ﷺ, and even his successors, from Abu Bakr, Umar al-Khattab, they didn't separate the Masjid from the day-to-day activities, from economics, from different things like that, secular. They didn't do that. Also, we don't have to do that now. Even though we might don't have the bigger space, but we can create certain departments or departmentalize it, right? Compartmentalize it to do what? To make that we can serve some of those functions. And I think we work better as a unit if we consolidate. And one of the things that you can see every year, we ain't gonna have it this year, Allah knows best, is their Eid. And that's a big test against us. A big test against us as our unity and our understanding as Muslims is that we have separate Eids.
It exposes the rift too.
It does. It exposes it. How you got separate Eids? I mean, how can I feel comfortable? I'm being honest to you. I'm going to our Eid and I'm saying I'm going to go celebrate with the Muslims. And I have Masjid so-and-so, Masjid so-and-so, Masjid so-and-so, Masjid so-and-so, Masjid so-and-so. They all said they follow the same guidelines, the same minhaj, the same Aqidah, but they all have separate Eids. Right? I'm thinking like, what's going on here?
You can't have them together because some fist might break out. It's that ugly.
I mean, that breaks out anyway without them being together.
Yeah, it definitely does.
But I'm just saying, I'm saying in reality though, it's something ain't right there.
Yeah, something ain't
The
right.
Prophet ﷺ made it clear that you want to make the Muslims be seen, you want to make Islam known on that day. Actually, they used to say the takbirat. They used to say it loud. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Loud in the marketplaces. You want the people to know that the Muslims are here. And what more might, what more position you can show that people can come Islamically to Islam if you show them a whole unified front. And this is what Dr. Tahir was trying to initiate last year, and all the other people who have supported that endeavor and even came up with...
You know what they call that, though? You know what they call it? They call it Ikhwaniyya. They don't label that as being Ikhwan.
Akil Ingram did a citywide Eid in Baltimore too.
Alhamdulillah.
That was happening leading up into a few years.
They call it the Ikhwani Eid. Wa'udhu billah.
Nah.
Well, they got a Salafi Eid over there. It's like, can you call it Eid a Salafi Eid? It's like we got to stop with the tag names, and we got to get into function.
First of all, it's not even permissible to call no Eid Salafi Eid, number one. The early man, we already dealt with that. You can't call them the Salafi Eid and all that stuff. I mean, I did hear a scholar in Yemen. I did hear a scholar with my own ears. He brought a hadith from Abdullah ibn Umar about the permissibility of referring to a masjid as Salafi, not the masjid itself, not the internal structure and stuff like that. He's talking about the idara or the minhaj the way it is. Yeah. However, that's the view of that scholar that he used. Majority of, that I've seen and came across, they really don't utilize these terminologies in terms of this being a Salafi masjid, this not being a Salafi masjid. The masjid is all for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. The aqidah, the minhaj that should be taught in there should be upon the kitab wa sunnah ala fahm salaf.
But that responsibility falls on the imam as far as what's being taught.
Yeah, Sheikh Fawzan said that the imam or the khatib, they should be responsible in terms of what knowledge they are picking from, what knowledge they are choosing from to disseminate. It should be in alignment with the salaf. That is in agreement with it. Yeah. But we need to stop labeling one another, man. We really need to stop labeling one another that is not room for in Islam just because I don't agree with so-and-so. I don't agree with you, you don't agree with me, so now I'm just going to call you this or I'm going to call you that. And this can die easily if we stop giving people power. And the easy way you can stop giving people power is start thinking. Start thinking. This is not Islam. All you have to do is, if we start thinking and really start studying Islam for ourselves, you can see Fulan and you see Alan and you see Imam so-and-so got a problem with Imam so-and-so. As I sat in the office of one person who was an Imam of a masjid, and he was speaking about another brother who was overseas, and I told the brother, I said, this is dunya weed. And the brother looked at me and said, what do you mean? I said, it got something to do with dunya, it's got nothing to do with deen. The problems that y'all mentioned about this individual got nothing to do with deen. I don't see one strand of deen that you brought to me right now. And he's looking at me like I grew horns in my ear because I'm not being a yes man. No, I'm not amazed who you are. I'm not amazed at your position. I don't see deen. Show me where this is a deen issue, and then we can look at it. But I see this as a dunya issue, and y'all arguing back and forth about it. So I'm not going to take your side against him, and I'm not going to take his side against you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick to the guidelines. I'm going to deal with my brother the way Islam tells me to do it. I'm going to deal with you the way Islam telling me to do it. And normally if everyone had that mindset, wallahi, tallahi, we can get somewhere. And we can stop masjids being taken over and being control-based and driven, agenda-based. We can stop that stuff if we come together as converts. Inshallah ta'ala, that's one of the
unity is with the community.
I like that. The unity is with the community. But who's the community? You guys. It's not departmentalized. It is what? What's the name? Yeah. So we got to stick to the guidelines. And when I say guidelines, I'm talking about the earlier Salaf. If you don't know that, by the way, when I'm saying guidelines, how they laid down the foundation for a masjid, the role, the responsibility, where it goes. That's the default. That's what I mean by guidelines. All right? The Quran, the Sunnah, the Sirah, all of that, we look at how they ran the masjid, and then we base our movement off of that.
And that gives your foundation for your modern day Islamic finance.
Exactly.
There's no modern day Islamic finance without the guidelines of the Salaf.
Yeah, mashallah.
Better call off.
Hey, yo, he felt it.
Coach Hard.
And then he threw it right there. He threw it in.
Man.
All right, so stay tuned, inshallah ta'ala. Stay tuned for next week, inshallah ta'ala. We got some special guests coming on. Help us talk about some of these issues. Like I said, this cannot be talked about in 1 hour or two. There's so much stuff we got for you guys. We're going to talk about zakat. We're going to talk about how zakat look, how it's supposed to be set up. We're going to talk about the imam position. position, how the imam, what's the qualification, what's his role, what's his responsibility. We're going to talk about the board of the masajids, how the masjid should be ran. We're going to talk about different programs, managerial skills, how the masjid should be maintenance. We got a lot of stuff coming for you guys.
Endowments.
Inshallah.
Yeah,
go ahead.
if we follow this guidelines, you will relieve yourself of being occupied, invaded, and religiously colonized by people who don't want no good for you.
Exactly, and also you will
Straight up
be
and
in a
down.
financial position
Yeah.
as a group of Muslims that can demand what they want, especially being the minority in the land such as where we at.
Well, the government has to respect you when you're respectable and you have guidelines and you have strength. They gotta rock with you.
And then you don't have to rely on
rock with
you don't
you.
have to rely on certain individuals who they are saying they are the spokesmen for the Muslims, and these individuals are compromising the tenets of the deen. You don't have to rely on them for them to be a spokesperson or a spokesperson for Islam. We don't need them to be our spokesperson if we consolidate
And we're
solidify. Exactly, and we have that. This is your your host Nafis Abu Zaid,
Coach Gaines.
Isa Abu Isa.
Thank you for tuning in. Stay in for next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.